setting says, if that's true, a question? Is there a question?
Yeah.
What's your name?
My name's Dana.
Dana.
I don't know if you're already going into this, so according to that model, it seems as though the higher your standards, then the less satisfied or less happy you're going to be. And so my question is, are there ways of testing if your standards are too high?
I'm so going to get at this, Dana. Listen, I only wish I'd been able to post the slides earlier because you'd be looking ahead saying, oh, he's going to get to this. And if I don't get to it, you and I were going to talk in front of these people in a moment. Okay, so the point is this. But Dana intuits. She goes, well, wait a minute. If this is true, then what are good standards to have? Are there some standards that are better than others? I think is part of Dana's issue. And indeed, clinical people said, look, if standards shape how we react to specific experiences, because we're comparing our experiences to our standards, then there may well be standards that are bad for us, or beliefs about relationships that do us no good. And indeed, Adelson and Epstein identified a set of standards. These are 4 of them. They actually had 5, but I'm going to talk about these 4, that they called destructive beliefs, dysfunctional beliefs about relationships. And I want to go through them, and what I want you to ask yourself, what makes this dysfunctional? And in each case, it's just a matter of applying the ideal standards model. Okay? So these are clinicians now who said, these are beliefs that are just not good for relationships. David, do you have a question? Okay, hold on. Their first dysfunctional belief is this: disagreement is destructive. So they had a questionnaire to measure this belief, and one of the items on that questionnaire is, when my partner and I fight, I feel like I'm dying inside. When my partner and I fight, it causes me to lose hope in the relationship. Another part of this dysfunctional belief is the sort of general level, which is when partners can't communicate, it means they're in a bad relationship. Or if partners are arguing, it means they're in a bad relationship. Disagreement is destructive. Now, well, why is that dysfunctional belief? Because, as we were saying last week, some disagreement is inevitable. People will disagree in their relationships. So if you have a disagreement, and you believe that disagreement is destructive, how will that shape your reaction? Well, it means that you're going to be more nervous, more anxious, more defensive. Oh no, we're disagreeing. If I believe that disagreement is destructive, then disagreement is going to be a very bad day for me. In contrast, some people didn't agree with this. Some people said, hey, a little disagreement is part of every relationship. It's natural that intimate partners will disagree. That would be the opposite belief. Well, now if you've got that belief, what happens when you have an argument? Like, oh, we're having an argument, we disagree. Sure, of course we are, because we're intimate. It's a natural part of intimacy. You'll be more calm, less defensive. The same argument, but your belief shapes your reaction to it. A second dysfunctional belief, mind reading is expected. An example of an item that people agreed with when they agreed with this dysfunctional belief was something like, intimate partners should know what each other is thinking without having to communicate in words. Now, admit it, you've heard people say this. Like, oh, this is such a good relationship, I just look at her and I know what she's thinking. And that's what a good relationship is all about, isn't it? Just know. Or how about this one? Look, I can tell you what I'm thinking, but I shouldn't have to. You should just know. You should know me so well. We should be so close that you should just know that I'm incredibly pissed off right now. Well, mind reading is expected. If you really believe this, if you believe that in a good relationship people should read each other's minds without speaking, then what happens when you don't know what the other person's thinking? Uh-oh. Maybe we're not in a good relationship. Or also, what happens when there's an opportunity to communicate honestly, openly, and directly? Well, why bother? Mind reading is expected. And of course, that's a problem. Because it means you're not going to be working on open communication. It means that if you miscommunicate, it's being considered, oh no, then I haven't read your mind. There must be something wrong with our relationship. In contrast, people who disagree with mind reading is expected are the people who say, the only way for people to know each other is through communication. talking honestly and directly is the only way to get closer to another person. And if you believe that, it'll guide your behavior. You're more likely to actually engage in that kind of communication. Which turns out to be a good thing. Sexual perfectionism. Again, you sort of get the pattern here. People who agree with this nexus of beliefs agree with the statement, it's very important to me that I satisfy my partner sexually every time we have sex. Another one is something like, every time we have sex, it's got to be a romantic, perfect, fulfilling fireworks experience. Well, if that's your life, good for you. But if it isn't perfect every single time, how do you react? Well, if you score high in sexual perfectionism, then the failure to have a perfect fireworks experience each moment is a big deal. Oh no! What does that mean? Does that mean we're in a bad relationship? The knowledge, the belief, shapes your reaction to the experience. In contrast, if you disagree with sexual perfectionism, if you're sort of saying, well, sometimes we'll have a good sex, sometimes it won't be our night, then if it's not your night, your reaction is going to be more moderate. It's less of a catastrophe. A fourth dysfunctional belief is the idea that men and women are basically different. The sort of belief that, and people who agree with that endorse statements like, men and women have totally different ways of communicating. Well, if you believe that men and women have totally different ways of communicating, if you've read the book Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, and you believe it, it kind of lowers your motivation to try to understand your partner if your partner is of the opposite sex. Because you've been told, you believe, look, there's a distance between us that there's no point bridging that distance because we're fundamentally on different planets. How does that affect your motivation to actually try to connect with your partner? It lowers your motivation to try to connect with your partner. In contrast, if you reject this idea, like actually men and women aren't basically different, there are no inherent differences between men and women that would prevent communication, then that would raise your motivation to try to communicate with your partner should you have an opposite sex partner. I went through this basically to point out that how the ideal standards model is applied. Over and over again, for each of these beliefs, the idea is the same, which is our beliefs will modify our reactions to specific experiences. We have a specific experience, and the nature of our beliefs modifies it. And so Dana points out, well, I'll still get to that. I mean, by the end, we will get to Dana's issue, which is, what's the implication here? What's a healthy way to believe? What are healthy beliefs? We'll get there. These beliefs seem to be unhealthy. Why? What makes these beliefs unhealthy as a whole is that they are unrealistic. If you have these beliefs, you are likely to be disappointed. And disappointment doesn't feel good. So far, we've talked about how our beliefs about relationships modify our reactions to specific things that happen in the relationship. But that's not the only effect we could see. Oh, wait, no, I have more of this. So this is still more. So this is now another slide making a similar point. And we talked about dysfunctional beliefs in the previous slide. Another set of beliefs that have been studied a great deal in the same way that functions as ideals that we compare our experiences to is the idea of implicit theories of relationships. So let me ask you, which statement do you agree with more?